Welcome to the Inside Travel Talk podcast, a radio show. Coming up on today's show, we will be talking about Royal Caribbean adding a second ship to the West Coast called Ovation of the Seas. Delta is introducing all new fares and products, D-Day trips, and 3 ways to cruise Hawaii. Let's start the show. The Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com, contains travel deals, promotions, and offers that may be time sensitive. All offers and information were accurate when the show aired. Travel deals and offers change constantly and are capacity controlled and subject to change without notice.
Explore your world. It's the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. Call or text the show now, 801-649-3700, 801-649-3700, and check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com. And now, here are your hosts, Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo.
We hope you are having an absolute terrific weekend. Welcome to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show. My name is Patrick Wiscombe. The entire purpose of this radio show and podcast is to help you plan and book your next vacation. And if you have no idea where to go, then we're going to give you some ideas of where you should consider next. And we are proudly presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. Thank you for taking the time to stop and listen. Coming up in this episode of the show, Mark is in Los Angeles, and he is broadcasting from Los Angeles right now. He's getting ready to board Royal Caribbean's Ovation of the Seas. We'll also be talking about Delta introducing all new fares and products. And I think something that every American should do, D-Day. We'll talk about how to get there. And we'll also talk about 3 ways to cruise to Hawaii. But let's bring in the co-host of this award-nominated show.
It is. It's a good show.
A good show. Mark is in L.A. right now getting ready to board Ovation of the Seas. And how are things in Los Angeles this morning?
Things are good in Los Angeles.
Where are you staying down there? And what have you been doing for the past few days?
Heather and I came down, went to some baseball games. We went to a Padres game.
Oh, you went to San Diego?
To San Diego.
Oh.
Yeah. And then we drove back up, and last night, we were at the Yankees-Dodgers game. Then in a few hours, we are headed out to board the ship Ovation of the Seas. This is a celebration. It's not a new ship, but it's an invite-only event to celebrate Royal Caribbean adding a second ship to the West Coast.
Okay, so this is the ad that we've been running for basically 6 months?
Yes. So now they have 2 ships doing 3, 4, 6, and 7-day cruises from Los Angeles area.
Let's get to the travel news headlines. Delta said that they're introducing all new fares and products. New fares, I guess that will include different levels of service.
Yeah, this is interesting because there really is not a change in how they operate. They've just rebranded this. So now they have 5 different products. They have Delta Main, Delta Comfort, Delta First, Delta Premium Select, and Delta One.
Oh boy. Okay, now I've flown Delta One. That was delightful going over to Hawaii.
Yes, I love Delta One. Some people might hear that and say, well, what happened to basic economy? No, they are not doing away with basic economy. They've just added it as a product within Delta Main. So now you have Main Basic, Main Classic, and Main Extra to choose from. So Main Basic is what we would have called economy, basic economy, which is, it's the same. You can't cancel it. It's a use it or lose it ticket. No Sky Miles, not eligible for upgrades, and no seat assignments. And then they have Main Classic, which is main cabin. And then they have Main Extra, which if you've purchased a Delta ticket, if you go right now, it just says Main Refundable. So it's the same products, just renamed. And then they've added the extra, that refundable category, to all of those 5 different products. So now you'll have First Classic and First Extra, Delta One Extra. So they've added fully refundable, which if you buy that extra category, it gets you extra sky miles as well. You get 2 extra sky miles per dollar spent.
So it's a rebrand.
It's a rebrand, basically. Yeah.
I would say that Delta's becoming a premium airline. Is that fair to say?
Yes, they are. And they're really trying to push people towards those higher fares, the extra fares. I still don't know if it's worth buying the refundable fares because you still get a flight credit for the future. But I guess there are some circumstances where you would want a fully refundable ticket. And then also, if you really like those upgrades where that's the tiebreaker, it might be worth it to have that tiebreaker.
Sea Life Florida welcomes its first marine animals at Legoland ahead of their June 6th opening. I don't know that I've ever heard of Sea Life Florida, but I guess it's part of Legoland.
Yeah, it's part of a brand new section of Legoland in Florida. And Legoland is a little bit south and kind of in between Orlando and Tampa, where Legoland is. So they've added this new Sea Life Florida, which opens on June 6th next week. Probably not as grand as SeaWorld has.
Right.
So they'll have more than 25 interactive exhibits, including Stingray Bay, rock pools, and then they have 10 underwater themed galleries. It's officially a conservation park, and so they are working to rebuild sea life and study how sea life works in different exhibits and different conditions.
So this is basically SeaWorld at Legoland.
At Legoland, okay. Correct. Yeah.
Explora Journeys will be scheduling its first Alaska season.
It's actually owned by MSC.
Oh, that's right.
Cruise lines. And so first, a lot of people probably have not heard about Explora Journeys. So here's a little overview of Explora. It's a luxury cruise experience. They kind of frame themselves as an ultra luxury cruise focusing on intimate, immersive voyages. They're boutique style ships. They're smaller. They really try and get that personalized service destination-wise. They don't have set itineraries, although it looks like this Alaska will be a set itinerary. Right now, they only have one ship sailing. Their second ship comes out this year.
Oh, is this the Explora and Explora 2?
Yes.
Okay, so it's that line.
And this ship will actually be the Explora 3 when it sells to Alaska. And they've also announced an Explora 4. And it's all-inclusive service. So the pricing includes dining, drinks, excursions, wellness activities. So it's kind of a seamless travel experience.
Okay, so what you pay, you just get everything.
Correct, yeah. And so they are introducing, so this is not until 2027, but they are up for sale now, and they are north and southbound Alaska cruises between Vancouver and Seward, Alaska.
Have you ever been on Explora?
I have not been on Explora. They are such a new cruise line. They've been sailing for about 2 years now, so I have not had the chance. I did talk to Explora Journeys this past week at a convention I was at, and they actually have pretty good prices for being in that ultra luxury small ship category.
Well, that's kind of the niche that MSC is. You and I were on World America in April, and you would think that with these big, gigantic ships, Icon of the Seas-esque size ships, that they would charge a premium, but they really don't. You will literally pay 2 and 3 times on Royal Caribbean what you'll pay on MSC.
Yeah.
So they're following Explorer, that is. They are following that exact same model, sounds like.
Yes. Yeah, they are. So I do know several people that have been on Explora and say it's just a wonderful experience.
Memorial Day was this past Monday. Always in this first segment, we have the destination of the week, which is Normandy. And of course, D-Day. This will be something that Nikki and I will be doing for sure.
Going to visit Normandy and the landing beaches of D-Day. I think every American should visit, go to the American Cemetery. It's such a special experience to go hear those stories and see where that happened. So we're coming up on, it'll be 81 years ago this week.
Oh my goodness.
So June 6th, 1944, when D-Day happened. And so I've actually had several people this past few months that have asked about D-Day tours and how to see Normandy. This is a good time to bring up how you can get to Normandy and see that D-Day history.
Referring to sports, and let me just take a slight left turn here. We always talk about must-win situations in sports. You know, Game 7, it's a must-win, blah, blah, blah. When it comes to the shaping of this wonderful planet that we are on, Normandy was a must win for everybody. That's why it's so incredible. What's the best way to go see? I would call it a sacred site.
Yeah. So there are kind of three ways to do this. The first is a river cruise. Most cruise lines have a really good landing beaches of Norway program from Paris. Right now, we've talked about this the last few weeks. Avalon Waterways has a free airfare to Europe on select sailings. So you could see Normandy on that. Also, many of the tour providers, and I would absolutely do this in a tour of some sort.
Oh, yeah.
Because you need that expert guide, that person to give the insights to the sites that you're seeing. So Globus has several tours that do that Northern France D-Day area. They also have a special of $7.99 airfare to Europe, or save up to $1,000 per trip. How I would recommend doing it is doing a custom private tour. This is how I've sent several of my customers the past few months to see Normandy. What I would do is fly into Paris, spend 2 or 3 days in the Paris area, seeing the sights there, and then taking the train or arrange a private car and go up to a city called Bayeux. And this is a historic town. It has a old world historic city center. It's compared to more of a village than a city. It's just that kind of setting that you're in. And the reason why I say go to Bayeux is because it escaped much of the destruction that surrounding cities had in World War II. So it still has its old cathedral. It still has all of the old world charm, whereas a lot of those cities have been rebuilt after World War II. It also has UNESCO listed tapestry that's still there from the 11th century.
Oh, wow.
It's a really good launching place to go see Normandy. Actually, in the city that we've talked about, there's the Tapestry Museum, the cathedral, the old city center, which has a mill and half-timbered homes. So it's really kind of a charming little city.
Oh, yeah.
But from there, you can take, and I have good company that I work with that takes you on private tours out to the landing beaches. And you can even choose to go in the old World War II Jeeps. So you can hop in the Jeeps and your driver guide will take you around to the landing beaches.
I would do that. Not that it's authentic, but it would at least put you in the right transportation mode.
You'd go see several of the landing beaches. Definitely go to the American Cemetery, which is probably my favorite site to visit in Europe. It's just so sacred, and everything that those people fought for, that they did that for us. And then other things you can do, take a day trip to Mont Saint Michel, which is during high tide, it's an island. During low tide, it's not an island. If you saw a picture of it, you'd probably recognize it. Yeah. It's a pretty iconic island there. And it has a pretty interesting link to World War II. It was a German outpost, and after D-Day, it was actually liberated by 1 soldier and 2 reporters. The Germans were on such a losing streak, I guess, that 1 soldier and 2 reporters walked in and basically kicked all the Germans out. They fled when the 3 people walked into Mont Saint Michel. Pretty interesting World War II history there. And then when you're done in Bayeux, 2 to 4 days in Bayeux, and then you can go back to Paris for a night or 2 and fly back. Or you could continue on and go to London if you wanted to make a whole World War II trip out of it.
Oh, I would.
Go to London. You can see the Churchill War Rooms, lots of World War II interesting things in London to visit.
That sounds spectacular. And especially coming off Memorial Day, which was this past Monday.
Yeah.
Go see it. Nikki and I will be seeing it. If you have any interest in paying respects to those who came before us in a truly must-win situation, take the time. Call Mark in his office, 888-718-7717, 888-718-7717. And our thanks to the men and women who served in World War II. We'll be back after this.
This segment of Inside Travel Talk is sponsored by Star Clippers. For over 30 years, Star Clippers has offered unique, authentic tall ship sailing experiences featuring creative itineraries throughout the Mediterranean, Caribbean, and Central America. To book your unique Star Clipper sailing adventure, contact Blue Planet Vacations at 888-718-7717 or blueplanetvacations.com.
Now, back to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by blueplanetvacations.com. America's best travel advisors. Call or text the show right now. 801-649-3700. 801-649-3700. And check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com. Here's Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo.
Welcome back to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show. Alongside my very tan friend, because he's also back from Fiji, but presently in Los Angeles, ready to take off and go to Mexico. My word, you are living in the sun.
Yes.
Coming up in this segment of the show, it's always the hot travel deal of the week. This week, we're going to Hawaii. We're going to help you save about $250 on packages to get to Hawaii. But before we talk about that travel deal of the week, let's get back to the travel news headlines. Alaska Airlines is planning a new long-haul experience. What are the details on that?
When Alaska Airlines purchased Hawaiian, they had already agreed to purchase several 787 Dreamliners. And so they're just trying to figure out what to do with these 787s. They just barely launched their first long-haul flight to Asia a few weeks ago. And now with the 787, they really want to go and compete with Delta, which Seattle is a Delta hub, as well as Alaska.
I didn't know that.
On these international routes. Delta actually, in the Northwest merger, that was Northwest Airlines hub. They're planning an all-new premium cabin first class on these 787s, said it's going to be better than anything any airline offers. And so they are really wanting to compete with Delta on the international routes, and they'll have the plane to do it now.
Those 787s are just unbelievable. They're beautiful planes. They're huge.
Although looking at the comments of this, they said, please put standard window shades in them because the 787 actually just has a touch screen that dims it and it breaks sometimes. And so some seats you can't close the window shades. So,
I'm a window shade open kind of guy, but I didn't realize that I was kind of in the minority. I didn't realize how many people close the window shades, even on takeoff and landing.
Yeah, I'm definitely a window shades person open as well. Although I look out all the time.
Yeah, you do. Tickets for airlines are down 4%, which is the biggest drop since last year, June of 2024.
The third straight month of declines and the largest decrease in the past 10 months. What this means for the vacation traveler is better airfares. Airlines really haven't started reducing their flights yet, but with more capacity, the lower the airfares are going to go. Last week, we talked about Mexico. This week, we're going to talk about Hawaii. Some of those deals we talked about last week to Mexico, 5-star hotels for 5-night packages less than $1,000 a person.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And a good part of that drop in the price was the airfare because airlines are just finding those destinations and really putting those airfares on sale to fill the seats.
If you've never flown, now's a good time because you're going to save money.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm a little bit surprised how many people still have not flown just within my own family. To you and I, it's just common. Hey, let's just go jump on an airplane. But to a lot of my family members, they've never flown. And I didn't know that. I just assumed that they had.
And that's one of the purposes of the show, to help show people that travel can be affordable and get affordable ways to do it. A lot of people do think flying is expensive, and to certain destinations it can be, but there are times when you can find a great deal and go out and explore the world.
Go fly. Totally worth it.
Yep, there's going to be some really good flight specials out there.
The cruise industry has reached a deal with Mexico on is this the standard passenger fee that was fluctuating all over the place?
Yeah, Mexico wanted to charge a new per person head fee for cruise passengers.
Okay.
It was going to be like $40 to $50 per person per port that they were charging.
Per port, per person?
Yeah. Yeah. And so they came to an agreement where that passenger fee is going to be $5, and it'll gradually increase over the next few years, but won't reach that initial proposed fee. Thanks to the cruise lines for really standing up for that, because it really would have been a big burden on cruise lines that visit Mexico.
Let's get to the hot travel deal of the week, which is always in this segment, and we are talking about Hawaii. There are 2 vacations that everyone can go on that will always be successful. Number 1 is Alaska. Number 2 is Hawaii. The hot travel deal of the week is to help our listeners save up to $250 on packages to Hawaii. What are the details?
Right now, we have save up to $250. This is from anywhere in the country, but I've chosen pricing from Salt Lake City since that's where most of our listeners are listening right now. We're seeing the prices drop about $150 per person to what they were a few weeks ago. And these are all for 6 days, 5 nights, include airfare from Salt Lake City, the 5 nights hotel. Best prices is on the Big Island, so fly into Kona. And that package price starts at $999 per person. And that is staying at the Royal Kona. It's a 3-star hotel, but I really enjoy that hotel for the location.
Yeah.
It's walking distance to lots of shops and restaurants. One of my favorite restaurants in the area is there. Great sunsets, just a good kind of basic hotel, but in a good location right there in Kona.
Is that the hotel that's kind of on that southwest corner of the island?
It is.
Okay.
The next best island, price-wise, is Oahu, Waikiki area. Starts at $1,019 per person. And I should say these are for early September dates. So midweek travel, early September. And that starts at the Outrigger Waikiki Paradise, which is a 4-star hotel, newly renovated. For those that have listened to us for a long time, it used to be the Outrigger Waikiki East Hotel. They renovated it and rebranded it. It's in a great location,
it sure is.
2 blocks off the beach. And then Kauai starts at $1,129 per person. And that is at the Hilton Garden Inn, Wailua Bay. It's a 3.5-star hotel right on the beach, though. Very good hotel for Kauai. And then Maui starts at $1,169 per person. And that is at the Royal Kahana Hotel. Hawaii is a really good value right now compared to what it was even 4 weeks ago.
You can't go wrong with any of those islands. Just choose where you want to go. Probably the most popular is Oahu. If you want to guarantee yourself a great vacation, there's 2 places to go. As I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, Alaska and Hawaii. You cannot go wrong going to any of those places. Call Mark in his office to book your vacation. No obligation. Call him in his office at 888-718-7717, 888-718-7717, and he'll also put all of this information on blueplanetvacations.com. When we come back at the bottom of the hour, we've got the infamous Just Cruising segment where it's only about the cruise news and it is only about promotions if you want to go on a cruise. That is next when the Inside Travel Talk podcast or radio show continues. Alongside Mark Faldmo, my name is Patrick Wiscombe. Thank you so much for allowing us to be part of your weekend. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show with Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. America's best travel advisors. Call or text the show now. 801-649-3700. That's 801-649-3700. And check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com. We'll be right back.
This segment of Inside Travel Talk is sponsored by El Dorado Spa Resorts. Escape to Cancun's Riviera Maya with authentic, all-inclusive luxury at an El Dorado Spa Resort. Our oceanfront resorts are exclusively for adults and have been voted among the most romantic resorts in Mexico and the world. To book your romantic beach getaway at an El Dorado Spa Resort, contact Blue Planet Vacations at 888-718-7717 or blueplanetvacations.com.
Okay, we're back. Welcome back to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, we will be talking about Royal Caribbean's brand new Perfect Day Mexico. MSC Cruises is ordering 2 more World ships. We'll give you the details. And if you don't have a passport, we're going to tell you how to cruise without a passport. Let's get back to the show. The Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com, contains travel deals, promotions, and offers that may be time sensitive. All offers and information were accurate when the show aired. Travel deals and offers change constantly and are capacity controlled and subject to change without notice.
This is the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com, America's best travel advisors. Call or text the show right now, 801-649-3700, 801-649-3700. And now, here are your hosts, Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faltmo.
Aboard for the infamous Just Cruising segment right here on the Inside Travel Talk podcast or radio show. That is the beautiful ship horn of Norwegian's Aqua, a ship that Nikki and I were on about a month ago. A beautiful, truly beautiful ship. And if you've ever been on any cruise and the air conditioning hasn't worked, we can confirm that Norwegian's Aqua, at least the balcony stateroom that we were in, it was as cold as we wanted the room to be.
Yeah.
Man, it was cold in there. We could dial it up. We just prefer things a little bit on the frigid side.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
Me too.
That was a genuinely beautiful ship. I was so impressed with that ship. Coming up in this segment of the show, we will be talking about Royal Caribbean's brand new under construction Perfect Day Mexico. And we'll talk about MSC Cruises ordering 2 more world class ships. That's not world class, not hyphen. It's just world, like World Europa, World America. They're ordering 2 more world ships. Let's get to the cruise news headlines. In fact, let's just start with Royal Caribbean's Perfect Day Mexico. Where is it?
It's on mainland Mexico in the port of Mahual or Costa Maya.
Okay, Costa Maya.
But it's going to set several world records, including the tallest water slide in North and South America and the longest lazy river in the world.
I didn't realize what a fan I am of lazy rivers.
Wait until you hear about this one that I'll talk about in just a moment.
Okay.
And so this kind of continues the trend. Royal Caribbean has started these destinations, the Perfect Day Coco Cay, Perfect Day Mexico, and also their beach club, and a new one that they just announced that we'll talk about on another episode, which is La Lepa, which is in the South Pacific on the island of Vanuatu. Let's focus on the Perfect Day Mexico, the water park. It has the tallest water slide in North and South America. It will have 30 water slides across 5 slide towers. The highest one being 170 feet. It'll take more than 2 minutes to complete.
That is so long.
It is, yeah. And then they have another water slide that's a family raft designed for 4 to 6 people to ride at one time going down the water slide. So some pretty interesting water park elements there.
Depending on the size of the individuals in the raft, that's going to take a current of water to push people along.
Yeah. So moving on to their next area is Splash Cove. It'll be the world's longest lazy river. It will take over an hour to float the whole thing if you did it at one time. It has an hour to go all the way around the lazy river. Multiple entry and exit points with a whole bunch of float up bars along the way.
By the way, I didn't realize that I was a float up bar.
Float up bar, swim up bar. Yeah.
I had so many virgin pina coladas when we were on vacation. I was like, kind of like just swimming up to the bar. It was terrific. In fact, I loved it so much that I actually proposed it to our HOA.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hey, if you want to make money, let's just do a swim up bar.
And speaking of swim up bars, in the center of Splash Cove, they'll have a massive 100,000 square foot pool, which is just one of 10 pools in the complex at Perfect Day, Mexico.
This place is going to be enormous. Is this for everybody, or is this kind of a cruise ship type destination?
It's a cruise ship destination. It'll be just for Royal Caribbean guests. And they also have El Hideaway, which is an adults only section, which features a 0 entry pool. I had to look up what that is. And it's a pool with no stairs. It just has gradual slope like a beach.
Yeah. So when Nikki and I were in Grand Turk, we went to Margaritaville. And they had a 0 entry pool. And I didn't think it would be a big deal, but as you get a little older, it's kind of like, oh, all right, that's just a nice little gradual ascent and descent.
Slope in.
Yeah, I love it.
In this area, they have a massive swim up bar and an in-pool DJ.
We did that at Grand Bimini. So Nikki and I were in the middle of the pool at Bimini Island. We just started dancing in the pool, and that brought a lot of people in from the edges. We must have just looked like fools, but I'm like, we're never going to see these people again. Let's just have fun.
Yeah. And then kind of the last thing is for those that just like to chill on the beach, they will have 2 different beaches. They'll have a north and south beach, so you can go just relax on the beach with complimentary beach loungers, umbrellas, towels. Another thing that's important about these destinations is food. They'll have 12 different options from sit down to grab and go eateries and buffets. It'll have almost anything you would want in kind of a private destination.
This is going to be a huge success. If the private islands like Perfect Day at Coco Cay, MSC's private island Ocean Key, Norwegian's Great Stirrup Key, this is going to be a huge hit. This is going to be a destination people will just want to go to, get on those ships for that specific reason, and go have a great vacation.
Yeah. Royal Caribbean in that destination will still have the option of doing the tours. There's some great archaeological sites from there and great things to do from Costa Maya. So you still will have those options to go to those things, but you'll now have this whole option of the whole private destination with a water park, beaches, dining options. I think it'll be a perfect destination to go to.
Margaritaville. Is this Margaritaville at Sea?
Yeah, Margaritaville at Sea
is adding a 3rd cruise ship in 2026. So they have Margaritaville at Sea Paradise, which we were on last year. They have, what's the one in Tampa? Margaritaville at Sea
Islander.
And so they've ordered another one.
Yeah, they've ordered or purchasing another one. Like all of Margaritaville at Sea ships, this is a former Costa ship. This 3rd ship will be what is now the Costa Fortuna, which will come into Margaritaville at Sea in 2026. It'll be their largest ship. It'll carry up to 3,500 passengers.
Wow. Okay. So they're really making it bigger.
They are. Margaritaville has been on a pretty interesting trajectory the last 2 years. We were on the Margaritaville at Sea Paradise, which is a fairly old ship. It used to just do basically casino cruises, gambling cruises, would go between Palm Beach and Grand Bahama. And then they purchased that when it was rebranded Margaritaville at Sea. They tried to make it more of a cruise experience than a casino experience. On that 2-day cruise that we did, it's kind of hard to do that. But then they added the Islander, which is doing 3, 4, and 7. And when they add this new ship, so they'll have anywhere between 2 and 10-day cruises. It's not clear where this ship is going to sail out of. Margaritaville as a brand is a brand that I really like. I like the hotels, kind of like that laid back luxury that they try and do. Now, they had a hard time doing it on the Paradise, but they've really executed well on the Islander.
Yeah,
and I'm sure they'll do a good job on this new ship that they have.
Yeah, the Paradise.
Good burgers.
Oh my goodness. Burger. How many burgers did I have? And Burgers in Paradise or whatever it was called.
Cheeseburger in Paradise.
Oh my heavens. Those were good.
Yeah. And that's one thing they really delivered on food.
Oh, they sure
I
did.
thought food on Margaritaville at Sea was amazing. Even though it was an older ship, their food and entertainment was very good.
Yeah, agreed.
And what could be better than sitting out on a deck listening to Jimmy Buffett?
Eating a cheeseburger.
Eating a cheeseburger. Yeah.
Oh, that was okay. Yeah, I will hand it to him. Which, by the way, Margaritaville at Sea at Paradise was going into dry dock for renovations, if memory serves. Didn't we talk about that a few weeks ago?
We did a few weeks ago. It's going to go in for major renovations.
Yeah, it needs it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when we sailed, it was only a few months removed from being just that casino ship where all their guests cared about was going to the casino.
Yeah.
And so, so they've really kind of rebranded that and changed that. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with that cruise brand going forward.
Agreed. Let's get to the cruise deal of the week, which is always in this segment. And this week we are going, what are we doing? Are we going West Coast? Because that's where you are. You're in Los Angeles right now. What kind of repositioning cruises do we have for listeners this week?
Well, we're going to Hawaii. I had a customer, Whitney, who wants to cruise to Hawaii in November or December and was just wondering what the options were. There are 3 different ways you can cruise to Hawaii. One is round trip from the West Coast. Another is inter island cruise, which Norwegian is the only one that offers that.
Yeah, Pride of America.
Pride of America. And then there are repositioning cruises. And so I just wanted to bring an itinerary up on each of these ways to do that.
Let's start with the round trip West Coast.
So these are round trip Los Angeles. A lot of people that don't like to fly, but still want to see Hawaii, this is a good option. Now, you do have to like days at sea for this because you have 4 days at sea getting to Hawaii and 4 days at sea getting back to Los Angeles. Holland America, Carnival, and Princess both do this round trip Los Angeles to Hawaii. Okay. So I chose a Carnival, 14-day Carnival cruise. This leaves the end of November. So leave Los Angeles, spends a full day in Maui, a full day in Honolulu, a full day in Kauai, and a full day in Hilo, and then cruises back to Los Angeles with a stop, which is a half day in Ensenada. Because this ship is not American built or American crewed, it has to have an international stop. So that stop is Ensenada, Mexico, before returning to Los Angeles area.
So that's 14 days?
14 days, and it starts at $16.88 per person for an inside cabin or $31.19 per person for a balcony cabin.
Wow, that's a big difference between inside and a balcony. That's bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, on a cruise like this, I did look at both Holland America and Princess, and it was about the same. Carnival did have the better prices. Probably the reason that jump is because the balconies are in demand on this.
Yeah.
With that many days at sea, a lot of people just want to sit on the balcony and read a book, not have to worry about deck chairs around the pool.
That's a good point.
With this many days at sea, I definitely would take a balcony cabin.
Yeah, if you can swing it, do it.
And then the next way to cruise Hawaii is just a 7-day inner island on Norwegian's Pride of America.
Both of us have been on that one.
Yeah. And then last week we talked about that ship is going in for a full renovation. I don't recall when that was. If you want to see every island in Hawaii, I think this is the best way to see all of the islands of Hawaii.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Now, when we talk about the prices, well, let's talk about the prices and then we'll talk about the itinerary. An inside cabin on this starts at $23.39 per person, and a balcony starts at $38.55 per person. And this was pretty much for any date in November. Now, compared to your typical cruise, that is a little bit higher. But again, to see all of the islands in Hawaii, if you were to fly around to all the islands and stay for a night or two on each of the islands, you would pay way more than this. Yeah. And the cruise also includes food and entertainment along the way.
Yep.
So it is a great way to see Hawaii. But the one thing I like about this is they do have overnights in certain islands. You leave Honolulu, you go to Maui, and you overnight in Maui. So you're there from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. the next day.
It's almost 2 days.
Yeah, almost 2 full days in Maui. And then you go to Hilo, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then you go to Kona, 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. So those are two different ports on the Big Island. So you're basically getting 2 full days on the Big Island. And then overnight in Kauai, 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. before heading back to Honolulu. So for a 7-day cruise, I think this particular cruise has the most port time of any 7-day cruise out there. So you're in port more than anything there.
That was fun.
The third way to see Hawaii is on a repositioning cruise. Whitney specifically asked for November. There are several cruises. Norwegian has several cruises that do this. In November, I found an interesting, it's a 21-day Los Angeles to Tahiti cruise on Oceania.
Ooh. That's NCL's luxury cruise ship?
Premium.
Yeah, premium.
That's the premium.
Okay.
And so Oceania is known for fine dining, luxurious comfort, and destinations are what Oceania really goes for. Oceania is the cruise line that really kind of started overnighting in destinations.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They kind of come out as kind of like a country club casual type cruise line is, kind of where they are. And they also have medium-sized ships with anywhere between 700 and 1,200 guests.
Okay, so small.
So they can get to a lot of ports. This ship can get into many ports in Tahiti where the big ships can't get to.
Right.
First, we'll just start in Los Angeles with the itinerary. Spends a day in Honolulu, Kauai, Maui, Kona, and Hilo before heading off to Tahiti. It's overnights in Bora Bora, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. in Bora Bora. Goes to Raiatea for a full day, Hiohini for a full day, and Moorea for a full day.
Oh, wow.
Before heading to Papeete and overnighting in Papeete. Some of these islands, like Raiatea, is probably one of my favorite islands.
Yeah.
In the French Polynesia there. I just remember taking a speedboat up a river. They say it's where the kind of Hawaiians left before they went to Hawaii. and so that's some folklore there.
21-day Los Angeles to Tahiti on Oceania. What are we talking about price?
This cruise ship that does this does not have any inside cabins. So outside or ocean view cabins start at $31.85 and a balcony starts at $42.90. For 21 days, that's a pretty good price.
Oh, it sure is.
Particularly because this is on a premium, a higher end cruise line than your typical cruise line.
Those ships are beautiful as well.
They are. Yeah, they do a great job. I've never sailed on Oceania, but I've eaten lunch on a few of their ships before. Really good food.
I didn't sail, but I ate.
Yes. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. As I said at the very beginning of this segment, and really the end of that last segment, if you want to have a terrific vacation, Hawaii, you just can't go wrong. You've got the West Coast, the inter-island, and the repositioning cruises. Call Mark in his office at the break. Just get the conversation started, no obligation. 888-718-7717, 888-718-7717. And he'll also post this on blueplanetvacations.com. When we come back, we've got Mark's travel tips and we'll wrap up. We've got a Frontier story that you will not want to miss. We're talking about Frontier Airlines. That is next when the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show continues. Alongside Mark Faldmo, live from Los Angeles. My name is Patrick Wiscombe. Thank you so much for allowing us to be part of your weekend. We will be right back.
Explore your world. You're listening to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show with Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo. Call or text the show now. 801-649-3700. That's 801-649-3700. And check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com. We'll be right back.
Inside Travel Talk is brought to you by AMA Waterways. From castles and capitals to vistas and villages, visit some of Europe's most remarkable sites and cities. To set out on your own river cruise journey, contact Blue Planet Vacations at 888-718-7717 or blueplanetvacations.com.
This is the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show with Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com, America's best travel advisors. Call the show right now, 801-649-3700, 801-649-3700. And now, your hosts, Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo.
Welcome back to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show. Hello there. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your weekend. Coming up in this final segment of the show, we've got Mark's travel tips and, of course, the travel news headlines. And we're also going to get to, I don't have a passport, but I want to take a cruise. We're going to tell you how to go on a cruise without a passport. Let's get to the travel news headlines here. I saw this news story about a Frontier Airlines story out of Los Angeles, which is where you are right now. This news story about waiting for a flight and the boarding agent yelling at people.
This is actually something that Heather and I experienced in Los Angeles. And then there actually was a news story about it. I don't know if it was the same flight. I can't remember if what we heard was Frontier or Spirit. This story particular is Frontier. The gate agent just made an announcement and said, no pushing. We don't want anyone to get hurt, because people are so restless to get on the airplane.
Oh,
so that's one thing these low-cost carriers have kind of created, I would say, an angry passenger, because everyone wants to get on to get their overhead space, get their seat. They've kind of created a situation where people are not cordial to each other. Literally, when Heather and I looked over, when we saw a similar situation to this, it was almost a boxing match over there, because people were so wanting to get on the airplane. Just goes as a reminder, make sure and treat your fellow passengers kindly. Treat your gate agents kindly. Hopefully you'll get to where you're going pleasantly if you choose to go on one of those more budget airlines. Well, that's another thing with airlines, charging for checked bags. People bring more carry-ons, which makes that overhead bin space a little bit harder to get.
we received a text question from Janice, which, by the way, if you want to ask your travel-related question, just call us or text us while we're in the studio. 801-649-3700. 801-649-3700 is how Janice got a hold of us. Her question is, I don't have a passport, but I want to take a cruise. I've seen the term closed-loop cruise. What does that mean? And do I need a passport to do a closed-loop cruise? Let's just start with the first part. What is a closed-loop cruise?
A closed-loop cruise is a cruise that starts and ends in the same port. So if you don't have a passport, generally speaking, if your cruise starts and ends in the same U.S. port, like a Mexican Riviera, Los Angeles to Los Angeles, or in the Caribbean, Miami to Miami, that is a closed-loop cruise. Now, technically, on most of those cruises, you do not need a passport. You just need your driver's license, an original state-issued birth certificate, or a certified copy of your birth certificate. However, that being said, I would still recommend that everybody cruise with a passport.
Yes.
Just for safety reasons. If for some reason you miss the ship and you're on an island, you can't return home until you get a passport. So you'll have to go through that process in destination. Or something medically happens and you miss the ship. It's just good practice to travel with a passport.
To that point, when we were on MSC's World America in April, we were in San Juan, Puerto Rico. There was a guest who experienced cardiac arrest. Now, how do I know that? I ended up talking to the nurse who actually, I didn't know I was going to talk to him. We were just on MSC's private island, Ocean Key, at that very, very north end of the island. And I was just making conversation. Hey, how you doing? And then he said, this is my first time on the island. I work on the ship. And he said he was a nurse. And so I asked him about the incident. He didn't give away any confidential or private information. He just said, my question to him was, did something happen last night? And he goes, yeah, we had one of our guests experienced cardiac arrest. I didn't ask if he had a passport, but they did have to get him off the ship. We were 2 or 3 hours into the journey. They turned the ship around to get him to a hospital in Puerto Rico. Emergencies do happen. We're not trying to scare people to get a passport. We don't get money from this. It's just a good idea.
Yeah, it is. And, also more and more islands, especially in the Caribbean, like Barbados and Martinique, do require you to have a passport.
Oh, they do?
If you cruise. So even if you're on a closed loop, there are some destinations. Those countries are so small. If someone was to miss the ship there, they don't have the facilities really to help with passports and things like that. So some islands in the Caribbean do require you have a passport regardless of if it's a closed loop or not. So, and that's just a recent thing in the last year or so that's happened. I recommend everybody cruise with a passport.
And it makes getting off the ship faster too.
Yes, it does.
It's just a good idea to have a passport. If you have any questions on how to get a passport, if you have no idea what you're doing, that's why we're here. Call Mark in his office, 888-718-7717, 888-718-7717. And there is a resources section on blueplanetvacations.com in the footer. I think it's literally called resources. Is that right, Mark?
It is resources, and there's all sorts of links on passport information and how-tos.
You can listen to this show again tomorrow morning, Sunday at 11 a.m. right here on this radio station and around the country. And you can stream, download, and subscribe to the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com. If you're not a podcaster, you can literally just stream the show right on the website. But if you do like getting podcasts, you can subscribe to the show. We're on all of the major podcast platforms. Well, now it's your turn to get out and explore the world while you can, because you never know what curveballs life is going to throw at you. Live your life deliberately. Live your life intentionally. Thank you so much for listening. Really, we don't have a business. We don't have a show without you. Thank you. We will talk to you next week, and we'll give you a report because Mark is going to be coming back from Mexico. Have a great week.
That's it. That's the end of the show. You've been listening to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show with Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. Book your adventure right now. Call 888-718-7717. That's 888-718-7717. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.